October evening. It's good to have all of you here, and I'm especially honored tonight to introduce John and Jeanette to the Hesston community. John and I first met when we were both students in theater and interpretation at Central Michigan University in the 1970s, so you can figure out how long ago that was. We worked together on a number of projects, and I was always and remain an admirer of John's creativity and his performing ability. Many years later, we connected at the Central Michigan University Theater reunion, and we've enjoyed many conversations since that time. John and his wife Andrea live in the Phoenix, Arizona area, and they're owners and operators of Black Mountain Communications, which is a marketing firm that serves nonprofit organizations throughout the Southwest United States. In recent years, John has developed a process for dialogue based on literature related to theater of the oppressed. And he'll be demonstrating that in a class tomorrow morning at the college. He's also a composer and performer, and he uses the poetry of his mother as well as his own writing to explore the power of music as a healing agent in family life. This performance is about an hour in length, and it'll be followed by a time for feedback and discussion. So please join me in welcoming John and Jeanette.
Go Royals! That's exciting, especially when you're from Detroit. Happy to be with you. I wanted to tell you quickly, we promised you an hour, but I want to tell you about my first experience with the Kansas wind. When I arrived at my hotel and I opened my car door, it nearly blew off the hinges. And I thought, that's a pretty strong wind. And I went to dinner with Tammy Howard, and she said, yesterday was windy. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you to my friend and colleague, Dr. Howard Keim, and to the Hesston community for giving me a chance to share this program with you. What I'm hoping to do is to maybe take this to retirement centers, to hospitals, schools, hospice, any place or group that might have an interest in art and healing. And so I'd be interested to know how you think about it. I've done the show only a few times, including last Sunday in Phoenix, and have made changes since, so that's why I'm still walking around with this, but I'm looking for feedback before it gets too far along. I wanted to tell you one thing about the format. I like to record music. I like to start maybe with a guitar, and then add a piano, and then add a vocal, and then maybe a harmony, and then maybe even add a friend if they're around. Over the years, some of these recordings now were made on ancient technology, so they're kind of artifacts, and they can't really be changed. Actually, the recording itself is part of the story, so that's one of the reasons why I like to use recordings. And also it allows me to bring in other voices, and I just think it kind of adds a layer of interest, a little texture to the show, but, you know, who cares what I think? What's really important is after about an hour, if you're inclined to stay for the talkback, for us to find out what you think. Family Cries.
Would you know my name if I saw you in heaven?
That's Eric Clapton writing about the loss of his infant son.
I will see you in the light of 1,000 suns. I will hear you in the sound of the waves.
That's Beth Nielsen Chapman writing about the loss of her husband.
When I find myself in times of trouble, Mother Mary comes to me.
That's Paul McCartney writing about his mother Mary, who came to him in a dream. She had died when he was 14. She came to him in a dream and comforted him. Let it be. Of that dream, Paul has said, it was nice to visit with her again. Well, these artists don't solely write about loss and grief. In fact, McCartney's written so many silly love songs, he finally had to write one called Silly Love Songs. But when it came time to process their own grief, they turned to their process, their craft, because putting feelings into words can illuminate the darkness. The lonely sound of a train in the night re-echoes the sound in my soul. That stanza was written in 1945 by a young mother grieving over the loss of her first child. I imagine that she took to poetry because she wasn't allowed to speak or talk about her grief. In those days, you were just supposed to carry on and get on with it. But she wasn't silent. Her words are infused with sound. They long to leap off the page. And she's not here with us any longer to make them come alive in that way. But she brought me alive, so I can do it for you. The young mother was my mother, Anne Sullivan Jeanette. We lived in Michigan. I was the 9th of Anne's 10 children. 10, imagine that. I came of age in the 60s and 70s, just sort of wrapped up in all my own concerns. You know, like how long I could grow my hair without getting kicked out of Catholic school. Of course, it was curly, so it didn't get long, it got big. Yeah, well, it's not really on his neck yet, I don't know. But I just didn't appreciate her sensibility at the time, nor did I have any clue what she had gone through with the loss of a child. And so I'm really glad that my Aunt Mary, her sister, at my mother's death, she put together a booklet of my mother's poems, and she shared them with my siblings and me. And I'm really glad she did, because as I explore these poems, I get to know my mother a little more. As I immerse myself in her art, and I bring her poems alive, it's nice to visit with her again. And I want to give you a glimpse of how her transformative process of using poetry for healing, how it informed my process of using music in the same way, and how both of our hearts then were open to the joyous experiences of life. We both had a love of humor, and a love of nature, and a love of spirituality, and a love of family. And also, you know, my father was a good model for me too. He gave me a work ethic. He showed me how to get on with life after yet another loss by the sad sack Detroit Lions. But that is going to have to wait for another show. Tonight it's about mother and son. And this presentation weaves together two of my passions. One is that for the process of writing, it doesn't seem complete to me unless there's a performance of that writing. I don't know, the spoken word, the oral tradition is just part of my DNA. And then when you add music, the emotions are heightened. Now why is that? I don't know. It's some kind of magic. We're just transported to the supernatural with music. And so I'm not really sure I want to know why that happened. But Victor Hugo once said that music expresses that which cannot remain silent. The second thing is that I'm really intrigued by how music, especially sad music, can contribute to healing. Neurologist Oliver Sacks says that music can give us access to blocked emotions. Musicians have weighed in on this subject. Here is Taylor Swift. This is insightful. Everybody has that point in their life where you hit a crossroads and you've just had a bunch of bad days, and there's different ways you can deal with it, and the way I deal with it is I just turn completely to music. I get that. Emmylou Harris says, the song Love Hurts began her love affair with dark songs. Actually, what she really said, even I can't go this far, she said, really dark, depressing songs that have no hope. But Greg Codd of the BBC notes that many of the most popular songs of all time brim with melancholy. White Christmas, My Heart Will Go On, Candle in the Wind. If sales are any indication, we love songs that rip our hearts out. In fact, in Researching Frontiers of Psychology, it was noted that sad songs can actually make people feel better. Somehow they trigger chemicals in the brain that induce a cathartic response, like tears, or chills, or an elevated heartbeat, and these are not unpleasant feelings. So that may be why people are drawn to listen to sad songs, and why artists are compelled to write and perform them. If that's true, you're about to feel great. So with these themes in mind, let me take you back to Detroit in the late 1930s, where this odyssey of using poetry and music to heal grief and thus open the heart to joy begins. Anne Sullivan married Emery Jeanette after they met at St. Catherine's High School. They were married in 1938, age of 19, which was not an uncommon age in those days to get married. But as my older siblings grew up and started to get serious in relationships, my mother reframed her teenage wedding as 3 weeks before I was 20. Their firstborn, Mary Ann, soon followed. Now, for all I know, Mary Ann was hell on wheels. I do remember this one fuzzy picture of her. Maybe 3 years old. She's dragging an old suitcase down the alley. She's running away. Well, apparently my parents were not really alarmed since they were busy taking a photo of the crisis. But this picture is how I remember the sister I never knew. She's making her first communion in her hospital bed. She's fighting leukemia. And she was always smiling, in my memory, like an angel. Not like the siblings I did know. They were competition for limited resources like bathroom time and food, like when Dad would put a bowl of fruit cocktail on the table for 11 people and there was only one cherry. Enemies. Angel. Well, when Mary Ann died, Mother kept her memory alive through poetry, writing about the everyday rituals like putting Mary Ann and by now several energetic siblings to bed. Evening song. The children's bedtime is often noisy, and I, too weary to share their joy, would hurry to settle each little bed with sleeping girl or boy. But every night, from her cozy nest, a laughing voice called out to me, "Sing to me, Mama, a lullaby." And as I sang, the weariness fled. I want to share 3 more short poems from this mournful era because each one of them enriches our understanding of what Anne went through. This is called Through the City Park. On a long path through the park, a very little girl, stopping every day with her bag of crumbs. Forgotten book or scarf or glove could not compare in anguish with the teary tale told after school of how the birds were hungry because she'd forgotten her bag of crumbs. She'd forgotten her little bag of crumbs. I must go into the park and find the birds who are waiting for her, and tell them that never set her own words to music, but she loved to sing, especially in church. The few recordings we have are scratchy, but her beautiful voice still comes through. This is one of her signature songs, Ave Maria. As a young woman, she sang on radio in Detroit, but she stopped pursuing a career to start a family. Oh, but she never stopped singing, though. She could be in her garden, she could be in the living room at the piano, she could be in her laundry room, but it was from the choir loft where she could shake the rafters. While she was coping with the loss of Marianne, I imagined her going to choir rehearsal one night, staying behind when it was over so she could have the church to herself and have a private moment with God. Reflected in this next poem, To a New Day.
Dear God, dear God, my heart must have a new face, a shield to meet the world anew. Please make it strong, but very warm, to hide the cold inside, to hide the cold inside, dear God.
Glad my mother had these. That writing could be an outlet for her pain, but still she wasn't able to talk about it openly, and so she must have been lonely in her grief. And that's a theme that she explores quite powerfully in the last of her poems about Marianne, Dreamless in Sleep.